You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibe. The Auditor General of the Federation has presented to the National Assembly the audit report of government agencies for the period of 2014 to 2017. Now, representatives of government agencies have been appearing before the Senate Committee on Public Accounts to answer queries in the Auditor General's report. Now, these queries range from allegations of financial infractions to misappropriation of funds. The Center for Social Justice put together a publication compiling the key issues in the 2014 to 2017 audit report of the Auditor General of the Federation. We had an interview with the lead director of the Center for Social Justice, Mr. Eze Onyekbiri, to discuss the key findings in this report.
The report of the Auditor General is just one maze of figures that is quite tilted in terms of language, that is not interesting to the average man or woman in the public arena. So he needed somebody to pick it up and summarize it and put it in the language or pictures that people could easily relate to it and associate themselves with it, and then pick it up as issues that we will need to deepen our democracy if we need to resolve some of those challenges and contradictions, and also to save money and resources, which we are lacking today. We are looking for where to borrow money, but you have audit reports reporting trillions that have been mismanaged in the last couple of years. So that the motivation is to put these things out there in the public banner so that it doesn't have to be hidden, you know. Like we are talking today, the media has got to be involved as part of the pillars of integrity. The PAC is doing its work, Auditor General has done its work, civil society organizations, the media, the anti-corruption agencies as well. They should form some form of prima facie evidence for them to pick up to be able to start working. Because if you recollect the way the Auditor General works, it's not political work, it's sheer professional work, right? They come to look at your books which you have presented, your financial documentation you presented. If they find anything which they think is an infraction, they get back to you to say, wait a minute, can you explain what exactly is this discrepancy? We think financial regulations have been violated, or law X or Y or policy Y, you didn't comply with it. So they present you with their findings and give you the opportunity to explain. It is only when your explanation is not deemed sufficient that they now upscale it and put it in their final report. If what your explanation clarifies the issues at stake, they drop it. So, and then you still have a further opportunity when they publish it to go and clear that agency with the Public Accounts Committee of the legislature. So it is a process and procedure that is filled with methods that is not subject to anybody accusing another of engaging in a witch hunt or say, oh, you are chasing me because of my political or religious views. They are based on factual, irrefutable evidence.
Now, could you give us key highlights of the report?
Now, the key highlights, the first one that will shock you is that between the NNPC, the Department of Petroleum Resources, and FIRS, over these 4 years, they could not account for 5.786 trillion. 5.786 trillion. And what is the deficit that we are projecting in 2021?
That's from 2014
to 2017. 5.876 trillion, which they could not account for. And of course, the chief culprit is NNPC, which could not account for about 4.5 out of the money we are talking about. And so, the other issues, I mean, these were monies that were supposed to come to the Federation account, you know, under Section 162 of the Constitution, which is the distributable pool account for sharing between the federal government, the states, and the local governments. It was not brought there. And all the stories, nothing has happened to change the fact that it was not brought there. Then beyond that, you come to federal MDAs. Some MDAs could not, some agencies could not provide the Auditor General with vouchers authorizing their expenditure. Vouchers authorizing expenditure, all right? Some MDAs, even where they had some vouchers, could not bring the supporting documents that provided the background to those vouchers. In some instances, MDAs deducted withholding tax, deducted VAT, deducted all those tax things that they collect from contractors or people who are engaged in government commerce. Instead of transferring it to the treasury, they pocketed it, they spent it. In some others, they were supposed to remit a portion of their IGR, about 25% of it, to the treasury. They spent the whole money and did not remit anything. In some instances, directors and permanent secretaries and chief executives, when they were leaving office after the expiry of their tenure, they took away the vehicles that were attached to their offices. Brand new SUVs that were bought for 30, 40, 50 million, they took it away. And it is contrary to the financial regulations. You don't take it away. It's not your private property, okay? And some of them can be mischievous. You buy a Land Cruiser for 50 million, and before you could say, Jack, under 1 year or two, you do some accounting abracadabra, and you say the value is now 3 or 4 million, and then you give the occupant of the office who was using it the right of first refusal to buy it, and he quickly coughs out money, such paltry sum, and then pays and carries away a vehicle which you know the worth is about 30, 40 million naira. So there were quite a number of infractions, too numerous for me to recount all of them. But the most disturbing aspect is that some agencies totally refused to cooperate with the Auditor General. In 2016, there were 160 agencies that refused to report. By 2017, because nothing was done to those who refused to report, 2017, it had gone up to 265. So 105 more joined. The Auditor General stated this in passing in his report. He did not give the names of the agencies, and that's the unfortunate thing. And we're expecting that as an appendix to his report, these agencies should be listed, even if it is for the purpose of naming and shaming. And he said, the report said that since inception of some 11 agencies have not reported at all since they were created.
Is this not against the Fiscal Responsibility Act?
Of course, it's against the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it's against the financial instructions, it's against all known canons of decency, legalism, constitutionality, ethics, and morality. So the expectation is that the head of these agencies should be sanctioned. But since we are not even mentioning their names at all, how do we as citizens even begin to talk about them? 265 that fell, refused, and neglected to report within a regime that says is committed to anti-corruption.
In the report, it was observed that the NNPC appears to be the agency with the most funds,
yes,
not illegally deducted from the Federation accounts,
yes,
followed by the DPR and the
yeah,
FIRS.
yes.
Why do we still have these issues, particularly involving the NNPC? And when you talk about funds illegally deducted from the Federation account, what do you mean by this?
The money, NNPC is supposed to bring all the money there for sharing whatever money they make. Monies that they made from sale of crude oil. Mm-hmm. It's not their personal money. Monies that they made from sale of crude oil. They will sit on it. The problem with it that is becoming intractable is that there is a Minister of Petroleum. And incidentally, the Minister of Petroleum is the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, the blackmail is that the Managing Director of NNPC or the Chairman or whoever, if you push him, it's likely he tells them he has instructions from the President, who is the Minister. Because whoever is, the other person is Minister of State. So the expectation is that the President should come clean. Should come out plainly to explain to Nigerians, I didn't authorize these deductions. Or these are the reasons for these deductions. Because there's a contradiction in terms. The Auditor General is not the person who lays down the standards or the norms. The Auditor General is looking at the law. The Constitution says, based on this section of the Constitution, you are supposed to remit X, Y, Z. But you kept it away. All the time that the Auditor General issues this report, nobody from the Presidency, from the Ministry of Justice, from any department has been able to contradict that what he says is the true position of the law or the true position of the regulations laid down by government, not the Auditor General. He doesn't give any law. He is not the source of authority for any law or norm or policy. He is looking at the policy already said to compare with the way you spend money or the income came in and saying what you are doing is not in consonance with the law, which is about compliance auditing. So we had expected the President to make a statement, but nothing has been coming out. And I say 4.5 trillion from that same agency. So somehow, some of us safely conclude that the President is happy with the situation of things. Because if he wasn't happy, he should have taken steps to stop that.
But how is this continuing to happen, particularly at a time when the country is grappling with dwindling revenues?
That is the key challenge, because politics is trumping constitutionalism. Corruption is trumping legality, and nobody wants to say anything concrete. It is clear that there are people who have vested interests in these issues, and they are holding back the nation. Okay? And the way they are doing it, they believe that the world is waiting for Nigeria. Other countries have benefited from increased inflow of investments, which leads to increased fiscal take by the government. But unfortunately, I pity Nigeria, because as of today, most countries where we sell our crude oil have set their deadlines for the termination of internal combustion engine, where all these cars, Britain talked about 2035, but now their prime minister is thinking of bringing it down to 2030. All right? Bringing it down to 2030. So that means in the next 10 years, they may not likely have the great demand for these things. France, Germany, everybody has set these targets. So even if you do the PIB today, many investors are even trying to pull out from these oil investments, because the investments are going to be stranded in the next 10, 15 years. So we've even missed the mark. We are behaving like the world is waiting for us. The world is not waiting for us. The world is laughing at us. We're the people left behind in time and space. So this stealing is continuing on a daily basis.
There is another, the Audit Bill is before the 9th Assembly. What do you expect from this Audit Bill?
You recall the 8th Assembly passed that bill, but it was a bill in a peculiar circumstance. All other bills that were sent to the president had an outcome. The president either assents to them, or he brings it back and declines assent and brings it back with a reason for declining assent to the National Assembly. When this particular bill, there is evidence it was sent to the president, it was neither assented to, nor was it returned to the National Assembly with a reason for declining assent. So it fell into a black hole, it fell into the craters. So that shows you that very mischievous persons along the key corridors of power, not just ordinary corridors, the key corridors of power, do not want transparency and accountability. That bill was supposed to establish an audit service commission, okay, which takes audit work and audit functions out of the regular civil service. It was supposed to enhance the powers of the Auditor General for the Federation. It could give him powers to surcharge, to recover money which has been mismanaged, okay, so that if you are the one supervising or presiding over keeping away monies from the treasury or the federation account, he could give a specific order to say, bring back this money. If you are not happy, you could go to court, which adopts a fast-track approach to determine the situation once and for all. Okay? He had powers to interview people under oath, to summon persons to say, come, and administer oaths on them. Okay? So that if you lie on oath. So the powers were quite expansive, and these are the powers needed for the modern audit function, because it has gone beyond just attest, compliance, regularity, to value for money. Even processes are being audited, computer-based audit systems are done, environmental audit, gender audit, all kinds of modern auditing frameworks are being devised. So it's no longer just that old offering an opinion, okay, based on whether it was split, it gives a fair view of the finances, whether it's credible. Even the 2017 audit, Dr. General didn't give the right opinion. He gave a qualified opinion, meaning that by qualified opinion, he's saying that I cannot really vouch from my examination. I cannot really state that the rules have been complied with, that this represents a good view of how the monies and income and expenditure and resources have been properly managed. So what he gave was a qualified opinion and gave his reasons. So for 2017, which is the last one. So in essence, the Audit Bill wanted to strengthen that agency. But those who decide what happened in Nigeria refused that that agency must not be strengthened.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. The conversation on police reforms continued in the National Assembly in the aftermath of the NSAS protests. The House of Representatives during the week organized an event with key collaborators to discuss policing and human rights in Nigeria. On Wednesday, November 18, the House of Representatives organized an event to discuss policing and human rights in Nigeria. This is in response to the NSAS protest over police brutality and extrajudicial killings. The event was attended by federal lawmakers, representatives of civil society organizations, international aid agencies, as well as the Nigerian Bar Association and concerned Nigerians. The discussion focused on the proposed bill for the Police Service Commission, whose responsibility it is to sanction erring police officers.
What we are about to discuss here is very important because in that act, there have not been any provision for any erring police officer who have goes beyond his core mandate. There have not been provision for sanctioning.
This dialogue is an innovative step in the bill-making process. It is aimed at introducing stakeholder ownership of the legislative process. Here, we are exposing a draft to get citizens buy-in even before the bill.
In emphasizing the need for police reforms, the UNDP resident representative to Nigeria and the Speaker of the House of Representatives spoke on the disconnects between citizens and the police.
If you ask or talk to many citizens, which I've had an opportunity to engage recently, there's a huge deficit in police and policing in Nigeria.
We do not have an effective system of policing when the relationships between communities and the police are defined by fear and mistrust. We want to help them be better public servants by making it easier to remove rogue officers from amongst their midst, because bad police make it impossible for good police to do their work.
The problem of human rights violations by the police was discussed at the event.
Orientation is being addressed. So the intendment, Mr. Speaker, is to give powers to the Police Service Commission to intervene even at the level of curriculum, so that we are turning around their mindset even from the get-go when they get into the police force, to understand what the Constitution provides, to understand what the rights of citizens are.
If I write a petition today against the NBA president that he's involved in an armed robbery in my village, the first mode of operation will be to arrest the NBA president before investigation starts. What does that tell you? That he's actually guilty. He now has to prove himself innocent.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives also touched on the appearance of some policemen.
Sometimes if you see a policeman shed out, sometimes rubber slippers, probably very unkempt, it's kind of very difficult to look at him with the respect and authority of state. So it's psychological.
A public hearing is expected to be held on the Police Service Commission bill after it scales second reading in the House of Representatives. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives organized a 3-day public hearing on 6 aviation sector bills.
There is a compelling need to align the sector with the international best practices as outlined in the International Civil Aviation Organization ICAO guidelines. This event is very important and crucial because of the major roles aviation plays in our economy and our national life. In the House of Representatives.
But the Speaker of the House of Representatives noted the absence of critical stakeholders at the public hearing.
First of all, the stakeholders don't show up from the private sector. And at the end of the public hearing, when the bill is about to be passed into law, or after it has been passed into law, then we begin to hear a lot of hue and cry. And as you can see now, not a single person from the private sector is here.
Civil aviation in Nigeria has left where it used to be at the background. It had added and increased its contribution to the GDP of Nigeria, making it one of the most important sector for economic advancement of Nigeria and consequently the prosperity of this country.
The NLC is worried about being left in the dark and questioned the nomenclature of the aviation regulatory body.
60 years ago, under a democratic government, the first laws that Nigeria as a government, as a sovereign, adopted and ratified and domesticated is those conventions. Those provisions are clear provision in our labor law. and therefore aviation sector does not fall under this category. He said armed forces, police is clearly stated in the labor law.
The NLC president was also before the Senate Committee on Aviation to discuss the 6 aviation industry bills. He warned against playing into the hands of the private sector, pushing for the concession of a nation's airports.
The attempt to replace authority with administration can only suggest an attempt to remove the management of our airports from possibly government control and ownership by the people. This rhythm with the latest tune by the promoters of concessioning of our prime airports, the changes of the name FAN as part of the demand by their private sector collaborators.
At the end of a 3-day hearing, a chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation assured that the contributions of participants will not be overlooked in the final draft of the bills.
One thing we shall take from here is the fact that we all agree that our aviation industry deserves a better deal, so let us unite in spirit and in flesh to make it a reality.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee has given a 72-hour ultimatum to the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas (NLNG) to submit documents on waste management and disposal component of the final investment decision in the NLNG Train 7 gas project.
People in the industry and interested
during an investigative hearing, the chairman of the committee said that the NLNG failed to submit its financial investment documents to the committee.
I don't see us achieving anything without the FID document as it concerns this. We are not looking at what is given to the consortium to handle that project and deliver on it. We are just limiting ourselves to our area of concern, and it has to do with waste management.
Let's take a look at some of the key happenings in the Senate during the week. These are members of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Ebonyi National Assembly caucus. They say no federal lawmaker in Ebonyi State from the party is defecting to the All Progressives Congress. This is in reaction to the defection of Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi from the opposition PDP to the ruling APC. Briefing journalists at the National Assembly, the spokesperson for the group, Senator Sam Egwu, maintains that they remain proud card-carrying members of the PDP. Speaking on the reason given by Governor Umahi for defecting, they say they consider it indecent for the governor to give the party conditions in a bid to secure zoning.
For the sake of clarity, we wish to state that not a single member of the Ebonyi State PDP caucus of the National Assembly is defecting to the APC. The 3 senators and 5 House of Representatives members remain proud card-carrying members of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, the platform under which we contested and won elections in 2019.
A legislative advocacy group, the National Intervention Group of Nigeria, has submitted a petition to the leadership of both chambers of the National Assembly. The petition is in respect of the decision of the executive arm of government to transfer the 2021 budget of the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading PLC (NBET) from the Ministry of Power to the Ministry of Finance. Briefing journalists at the National Assembly, the convener of the group argued that it is unlawful for the federal government to, through the 2021 appropriation bill, attempt to alter an act of a National Assembly by shifting an agency from one ministry to another without recourse to Parliament. He explains that the transfer is in breach of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005 and gross violation of Senate orders and House of Representatives rules.
According to Section 11 of Marketing Regulation, the sale of electricity is prohibited unless with the express permission of the minister, quote and unquote, Minister of Power. And under the conditions stipulated by him, nothing in these regulations shall authorize any licensee to supply, sell, exchange, or barter a supply of electrical energy, however derived with any other person.
NBET is the current manager of electricity pool in the Nigerian electricity supply value chain. The company was incorporated in 2010 as part of the country's roadmap for the power sector reform and full implementation of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act. NBET is 100% owned by the Nigerian government. Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of the Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.